We could have voluntarily decided that, look, we're gonna go into back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick the candidate that way. Bruce Spiva, lawyer for the DNC. Bernie Sanders didn't have a chance. He said it himself. 400 superdelegates before the election had even begun had pledged their allegiance to Hillary Clinton.
We have received up to now 46% of the pledged delegates. We have received all of 7% of the superdelegates. Secretary Clinton has 525 superdelegates. We have all of 39. So she has 93% of the superdelegates. And here is what is really very, very interesting and I think not a good thing. Over 400 of these superdelegates indicated their support for Secretary Clinton before anyone else was in the race. They indicated their support for Secretary Clinton before the first ballot was cast, before the campaign even began. In other words, the establishment determined who the anointed candidate will be before the first voters got into the process. I think that that is a very, very bad idea, and it's an idea that we intend to change at the convention. But it is a bad, not only a bad idea from a democratic perspective, the idea that a party would in a significant way determine who the candidate is before people got involved in the political process. It is a bad idea because if you go that route, you may not end up with the strongest candidate to defeat somebody like a Donald Trump. Secretary Clinton does represent the establishment.
Bernie Sanders says his campaign is taking on the political establishment because you're part of the establishment. Are you?
Well, I have to say I didn't understand that at all. I really don't understand what he means by that.
But are you the establishment?
I just don't understand what that means. He's been in Congress. He's been elected to office a lot longer than I have. I was in the Senate for 8 wonderful years representing New York. He's been in the Congress for 25. And so I'll let your viewers make their own judgment.
My first interview is with Iowa Bernie delegate Jessica Butler.
My name is Jessica Butler, and I live in Sioux County, Iowa, northwestern part of it. I'm a social worker, and I'm originally from Rockford, Illinois.
Jessica Butler is most famously known for this image of her at the convention.
It was like a winter day, it was really cold, and I knocked on this door, and it was this older woman, and she invited me inside because it was cold. And so I get in there, and we're chit-chatting, just getting to kind of know each other. I said, you know, I'm here volunteering for Bernie Sanders. She just kept talking about, like, her struggles because she's on, like, disability, and she has a mental illness, and her partner that wasn't there at the time had served in the war, one of the wars, and he has PTSD. And so, I don't know, I just was listening to their stories, and we were just getting to know each other, and I felt like we were building a rapport and something that would last beyond the campaign. Her partner, came eventually, and he told me a bunch of his struggles as well. So anyways, I'm there for an hour, and I'm chit-chatting with them. I'm knocking on doors, and I'm like, ugh, I really got to get going. And the first question I'm usually supposed to ask is, you know, can you caucus for Bernie Sanders? And after an hour long of getting to know them, and, you know, I just really liked them so much, they were like, we can't caucus for Bernie because we have like debilitating like mental illnesses and like fear of anxiety of like people and this and that. And so, I mean, my heart was kind of broken to like hear that, but like I still cared, and I was really happy that I learned so much about them and their struggles, because that's how we continue to fight for those people who don't have the ability maybe to get out and have their voices heard. So fast forward a little bit, I chit-chat with them in between time in the caucus, just checking in on them, like I brought them some food and things like that. But caucus night rolls around, I'm getting people signed in here and there, and all of a sudden, the man and the woman that I knocked on those doors from, they show up to the caucus site, and my mind was just blown, because like they had told me that like they couldn't make it, that they couldn't come because of all these challenges that they have. And they came, and not only did they caucus for Bernie, they like stood up in front of a group of 70 people in their community and talked about their challenges and their struggles. And they were like, that's why we're fighting for Bernie Sanders, because he's been fighting for people like us his entire life. And it just was so inspiring to me that like that is what this campaign did, is it helped empower us, and it helped us to bring each other together.
6 superdelegates went to Hillary Clinton. This is equal to 60,000 votes. Jessica Butler would share her thoughts on Donna Brazil's revelation.
And so many things rolled out during the campaign that was just sort of another, like, I guess, nail in the coffin, proving that this election was rigged against Bernie Sanders and the people that supported him. But I believe that, like, this starvation diet, and with Donna Brazil and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton, that this link between the funding and Hillary, it just shows that she had her finger on the scales to herself the entire time. It just showed the type of control and influence that she had over the election, even before the nomination was made. On top of that, you know, the superdelegates, before Bernie even came out saying that he was going to run for president, so many superdelegates claimed to be in her court.
Because this, I'm going to film it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. My name is Mitch Thompson. I am the precinct chairman of Hardin Township in Johnson County, Iowa. We are vying for one delegate, and we have a tie at 29 and 29. We cannot resolve the vote. 30 is the liability number for the single delegate. So at this point, I will ask Senator Kevin Kenney to flip the coin. Please come observe. The front of the coin is Father of our country, George Washington. The back is the schoolhouse, which is the coin from the state of Iowa. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Eric Johnson, the Senator Sanders precinct chair. Captain.
Julie Brerecht. I'm precinct captain for Hillary Clinton.
All right. And we have the coin. And do you mind if ladies call it?
No.
All right.
Doesn't matter. 50-50.
Folks, we are about to flip the coin. The precinct chair or the captain for Hillary will call it in the air. Heads is George Washington. Tails is the little schoolhouse for the state coin of Iowa. Call it in the air.
No. Okay.
A coin toss is not a form of
It
democracy.
is tails.
There is nothing democratic about a coin toss. It's just merely
Tie
chance.
has been broken by coin flip, and we'll go to Bernie Sanders for the...
I don't even know why the Hillary Clinton campaign covered this up.
Iowa Democrats don't take democracy seriously.
This is just sad at this point, seeing that the Democrats are actually using coins to rely on who gets to be a delegate or not.
delegate for this precinct is Hillary Clinton. It was very, very close, people. Remember, this is a caucus. It was very, very close. It was called by a coin toss.
How were you treated at the convention?
We were not treated very nice at all. Hillary Clinton commercial the entire week, and also they were very aggressive with us and trying to just like shut us up. They just weren't kind at all. Like, we were just dismissed the whole time.
What was the message that you left the convention with?
The message that I left with, and what I think a lot of people left with, were that people left of the Democratic establishment are not welcome into the party. And it was perfectly clear, I mean, throughout the primaries and at the convention, that people like us that are more on the left side of the spectrum are not welcome, having our voices heard, because they're more progressive than majority of the people elected into office right now.
We could have voluntarily decided that, look, we're gonna go into back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick the candidate that way. Bruce Spiva, lawyer for the DNC.
Joining us now, NBC News senior White House correspondent Chris Jansen. Chris, you sat down with Bernie supporters in Colorado, where you found few fans of the superdelegate system. What did they tell you? One, they think the system is rigged, and two, they still believe that these superdelegates can turn the race for Bernie Sanders.
I think the Clinton machine is pressuring those superdelegates. If you want to have a political career, you better be backing Hillary.
Bernie Sanders won the state with over 72,000 votes. Hillary Clinton lost the state with over 49,000 votes. Despite all of this, Hillary Clinton gets all of the superdelegates except for 3. None of them voted for Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders has been the first person to introduce legislation with his College for All Act that would allow students to go to college for free at four-year state universities.
He's not owned by billionaires, not getting payoffs from other people to do stuff.
And he talks about the issues that are important to me. He's for the people.
He's the one who'll tell you what the issues are, and he'll tell you specifics, which you're not getting from anyone else today.
Now is the time to think big and to understand all that we can accomplish for all of our people. Police officers have an enormously difficult job, but when a police officer or any other public official commits a crime, that crime must be punished. It's not acceptable that young African Americans are walking down a street in a city in America and are being brutalized by police. That has got to end.
I'm Kimberly Heslin, and I'm a activist mostly in Colorado.
So you were there on caucus night?
Yes, I definitely was. That was a very intense night. We went out to the junior high. I got there about, I'd say probably at least 4 hours early because I knew it was going to be a really big crowd. Definitely was a big crowd. Brought my daughter with me, because I didn't have anyone to watch her. And, I wanted to make sure I was early enough to get parking. And I was. And then, like I said, I was about 4 hours early. We decided, okay, well, nobody's here yet. We can leave for just a minute and come back. Maybe half an hour later, we came back and the parking lot was already full. So we went ahead and got in line. Thankfully, the line wasn't too long just yet, but we still had, hours to wait. God, it ended up insane. The show out for Bernie, I mean, it was beyond what the school had capacity for. They had to open up different levels of the school that was supposed to be closed and locked up for the day. They had such a hard time getting everybody in, and they actually couldn't get everybody in. There was a lot of people that were just left outside. It went for hours. We were in line. It was crazy till probably like 7:00 at night. The news had showed up and already gave up and left because it took so long to get everybody in. It was really intense. Like we stood in line for hours.
Why Bernie? Why not Hillary?
Oh my gosh. There's so many reasons why Bernie. My background in my profession is I am a medical biller. So essentially, whenever you go to the doctor or you go to the hospital, whenever you get sick, whenever you have surgery, there's a person in between your provider and your insurance company. And I am that person. I'm the person that gets your insurance company to pay. And with that being said, I get to see what happens behind the scenes that really nobody really knows about. How can we sit here and allow someone to go completely bankrupt because, oh my gosh, it's choosing between I'm going to get sick and die or I'm going to have medical debt for the rest of my life or go bankrupt. One huge thing that really stood out to me was on February 24th, 2016. Hillary was holding a private fundraiser in Charlottesville, South Carolina, and there was an activist, her name was Ashley Williams, who went to that private fundraiser, and she held up a sign that read, "Bring them to heal."
We've got somebody saying here, we have to bring them
for mass
to
incarceration.
Okay, we'll talk
I'm
about
not a super predator, Hillary Clinton.
Okay, fine, we'll talk
You
about it.
apologize to black people for mass incarceration?
Well, can I talk? And then maybe you can listen to what I say. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. There's a lot of issues in this campaign. The very first speech that I gave back in April was about criminal justice reform
You called black
and
people
about
super predators.
You're being rude.
That's not appropriate. Super predators. This is not appropriate. That's rude.
Now, if you want to hear the facts, you just want to talk.
I know that you called black people super predators in 1994. Please explain the record. Explain it to us. You owe black people an apology.
Excuse us. That's inappropriate. If you will give me a chance to talk, I'll approach your side. You know what? Nobody's ever asked me before. You're the first person to ask me, and I'm happy to address it, but you are the first person.
She asked Hillary to apologize for mass incarceration of black people. Not only did Ashley not get an answer from Hillary, she was immediately escorted out. Hillary's past is her present, and in her past, she bragged about being a Goldwater girl. And we all know that Goldwater was a conservative, right-wing nutbag. He thought that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was an overreach of the federal government. And when he was asked if he would vote against it again, he absolutely said he would. So that to me just tells me Hillary's really a Republican. She was quoted as saying she has a private persona and a public persona. And after that, there was a huge spark all over the internet with the hashtag #WitchHillary. She might say certain things, but if you look at her voting record and you look at everything she stood for, Bernie was the only one that pulled her to the left. Bernie pulled her to the left on the minimum wage. He fought hard for $15, and she wasn't having it until she saw how popular Bernie was becoming over that, and then she finally went to $12. She really is just another establishment Republican hiding under the guise of the title Democrat, and she is not a Democrat.
How is Bernie going to help your family?
Gosh, in so many different ways. Education. Education is a huge thing that he fights for. He wants us to be able to have a fair education for everybody, not just all these private schools. He wants public schools to be better. He wants us to be able to have public college instead of us having all this massive debt. I can't tell you, I have over $40,000 in student debt. And there's nothing you can do to write it off. He wants Medicare for all. He wants an actual future for our kids.
My question for the candidates is, do Black Lives Matter or do all lives matter?
The question from Arthur in Des Moines
Well, there we
is,
go.
do Black Lives Matter or do all lives matter? Let's put that question to Senator Sanders.
Black Lives Matter. And the reason those words matter is the African American community knows that on any given day, some innocent person like Sandra Bland can get into a car, and then 3 days later, she's going to end up dead in jail, or their kids are going to get shot. We need to combat institutional racism from top to bottom, and we need major reforms in a broken criminal justice system. in which we have more people in jail than China. And I intend to tackle that issue to make sure that our people have education and jobs rather than jail cells.
You voted against the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Would you do so today?
I would have to vote against it.
In the defense of liberty is no vice.
In 1964, during the presidential election of that year, I was a Goldwater girl. We used to wear, little banners which said Goldwater girl.
We need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
I mean, if we're honest, for a lot of well-meaning, open-minded white people, the sight of a young black man in a hoodie still evokes a twinge of fear.
What's something that you always carry with you?
Hot sauce. If that is your position, then I will talk only to white people about how we are going to deal with the very real problems.
That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean.
No.
But like what I'm saying is what you just said was a form of victim blaming, right? You were saying that what the Black Lives Matter movement needs to do to change white hearts is
no, I'm not talking about, look, I don't believe you change hearts. I believe you change laws, you change allocation of resources, you change the way systems operate. You're not going to change every heart. You're not.
You called out President Clinton for defending Secretary Clinton's use of the term super predator back in the 90s when she supported the crime bill. Why did you call him out?
Because it was a racist term and everybody knew it was a racist term.
It's undemocratic. It favors the party elite, high party office holders within the Democratic hierarchy, but also congresspeople who get one superdelegate. One vote in real terms is equal to 10,000 average American voters in a Democratic primary if you map it out mathematically. It is ironic that the Democratic Party would use such an undemocratic system factored into their sort of party politics. Patrick Henningsen. States like Minnesota, where Bernie Sanders won huge at the convention, Hillary Clinton would steal that state.
Sanders didn't just win, he won big. He won in every Minnesota congressional district, routing Hillary Clinton in a contest that almost everyone thought would be a close one. Sanders had predicted that he would do well if the turnout was big, and it was. There were long lines at caucuses. A number of precincts even ran out of ballots, allowing voters to write in their choice on index cards. Sanders' win came despite the fact that almost every prominent elected official in the state, including the governor, Senators Klobuchar and Clinton, all endorsed Hillary Clinton. The DFL party chair, who also had endorsed Hillary Clinton, insisted the result is not an embarrassment for the DFL establishment.
I don't think it's an embarrassment to anyone. Whether you support Secretary Clinton or Senator Sanders personally, you can be proud of what happened here in Minnesota tonight. Thousands of Minnesotans came out, many first-time and new participants to make their voices heard in this process.
Unlike your typical delegate who will cast their vote for the presidential nominee based on their constituent support, superdelegates have the choice of voting for who they want in office, and being that they make up 15% of the delegates voting, they absolutely have the power of choosing the presidential nominee. But today a vote was cast in an effort to end the superdelegate system altogether.
The argument against superdelegates is coming to the forefront today.
It's important to stand up and be recognized and say, something's not right, how can we change it?
During Wisconsin's primary, Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton by about 13 percentage points.
If you're a Bernie supporter, you feel like the system worked against you.
But the vast majority of superdelegates have voted against the people's will. 6 of the 10 backing Clinton, 1 backing Sanders, and just 3 undecided.
Bernie Sanders won the state with 57% of the vote, yet we have the majority of the superdelegates in the state that are supporting Hillary Clinton.
And this is the driving force for today's vote, and it passed.
The Wisconsin State Democrats just voted to abolish the superdelegate system.
But the matter didn't go through unanimously.
A few strong minds sometimes are a better balance.
Some questioning whether it was the best decision for the party.
Sometimes those people who were voted in by popular vote have a better handle on individuals and issues that the general populace do not.
And while not everyone was on the same page on this matter at today's convention, it seems like most are prepared to back whoever the party endorses for the party's sake.
Today's vote to end the superdelegate system is a non-binding resolution, meaning it's essentially advice for the National Democratic Party. And if it were to be supported on the national level, it wouldn't take effect until 2020.
Hillary Clinton would take the state using the superdelegates.
Senator Sanders won the Minnesota caucuses. You have endorsed Hillary Clinton. You are a superdelegate. What do you make of the argument put forward by the Sanders campaign that superdelegates who represent states that Sanders has won should consider voting for the candidate supported by voters in their state?
Well, the superdelegates are part of our system. I haven't read that in the rules, that interpretation.
Well, you can vote for whoever you want, but they're saying, shouldn't you, as a senator of Minnesota, follow the lead of the voters, the Democratic voters who turned out for the Minnesota caucuses?
I think Democratic voters who elected me to the Senate want me to exercise my judgment on who I think would be the best president of the United States, and I think that person is Hillary Clinton.
All right, Senator Al Franken.
Later, Al Franken would resign from the Senate in shame.
An attorney in Las Vegas. I run a solo practice so that I can sort of choose my fights. I got into the Bernie campaign. I originally wasn't intending to get involved in the campaign, but money in politics has always been a personal crusade of mine.
All right, let's talk about why in the 1990s Wall Street got deregulated. Did it have anything to do with the fact that Wall Street spent billions of dollars on lobbying and campaign contributions? Well, some people might think, yeah, that had some influence. Let's ask why it is that we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and your medicine can be doubled tomorrow, and there's nothing that the government can do to stop it. You think it has anything to do with the huge amounts of campaign contributions and lobbying from the fossil fuel industry? Let's talk about climate change. Do you think there is a reason why not one Republican has the guts to recognize that climate change is real and that we need to transform our energy system? Do you think it has anything to do with the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil pouring huge amounts of money into the political system? That is what goes on in America. There is a reason why these people are putting huge amounts of money into our political system. And in my view, it is undermining American democracy, and it is allowing Congress to represent wealthy campaign contributors and not the working families of this country.
When I saw that Bernie seemed to be somebody who was really legitimately fighting for that really got me interested in jumping in and seeing if we could make that our next president.
Do you believe that the process was rigged?
Yes. People violated the laws. People violated the rules.
Well, it's a big election. And, there's been a lot of activity here. So I just wanted to be here on election day.
And people cheated in ways that we necessarily haven't thought of making laws against yet.
If you go to the polls on election day and say, I'm an independent and I want to vote in the Democratic primary, you are automatically given a ballot without the presidential race. And even if you then say, how do I vote in the Democratic primary? The poll workers are instructed to respond, independent or non-party voters can't get Democratic ballots. So the only way to get to vote in the presidential primary is if you say the secret code words, I want a Democratic crossover ballot. Yeah, you have to say the words crossover ballot, or the poll worker will never admit the existence of the correct ballot.
And took advantage of the fact that the party nomination process is largely handled outside of government control. But I do believe absolutely is that given a fair contest, Bernie Sanders absolutely would have won. It wasn't just unfair, it was intended to be. The background here is that at the Nevada State Convention, Hillary Clinton technically won by 32 delegates. Yet it came out later that there were 64 Bernie Sanders delegates that were disqualified without hearing or the regular process. We have credentials committees, and for some reason they had decided to separate that based on each candidate. On the night before, late at night, the night before the convention, the Clinton campaign presented a very long list of Sanders delegates that they said they had objections to. People who had their credentials for the county conventions, they had appeared, they had been fine there, but they came through and they said, well, we have objections. The objections were things like, oh, well, the address listed there doesn't match the address on the voter registration, or, you know, we have the wrong birth date, or things like that, where it wasn't something necessarily problematic, just a discrepancy that they said, well, this is a problem.
It's your voice, your vote in the race for the White House. Hundreds of Bernie Sanders supporters held a protest today outside the Bellagio. They're upset over the way last night's Nevada State Democratic Convention ended. Organizers say they had to end the event after it went several hours longer than anticipated and security became an issue.
There's this other category of superdelegates, and these are party officials, former party officials, insiders, and they're not committed. They can vote for anybody they want to. This all goes back to 1972, when a lot of Democratic insiders felt that the party's voters had gone crazy nominating George McGovern for president, went on to lose in a big landslide to Richard Nixon. So they created this superdelegate category of delegates who can vote on their own. Last time we saw it, though, was in 2008. Remember, there was a big fight about this. Hillary Clinton, again, had all the superdelegates on her side, and yet Barack Obama was doing very, very well at the polls, began to beat her in the primaries, and there was a big controversy. How could Hillary Clinton have an equal number of delegates? Look at Obama's won all these races. Finally, those superdelegates moved over to Barack Obama, solved the problem.
And then you start thinking, how can they top this? How can they top all the things that they're doing? How can they go out of their way to violate voter rules and get away with it? Then you have California.
Does your vote count for more than 400 voters in last November's election? The answer is no. The Sacramento County Registrar's Office found their ballots locked away in a warehouse. In the pink or in the red. For more than 400 Sacramento County voters, that color makes a difference.
At this point, legally, the code does not allow me to open those ballots.
Jill Levine is the Sacramento County Registrar of Voters. She tells KCRA3 that so many mail-in ballots came into one polling place last November, that pink bag, which holds the ballots, was overflowing.
Both the supply van driver and the inspector both insisted that they told the ballot transporters. And so somewhere between them telling the people bringing the ballots back and us receiving them, the communication broke down.
That red bag didn't end up with the pink ballot bags. In fact, it ended up in a county warehouse where it remained locked until it was opened last week.
This should never have happened in the first place.
Inside were 407 pink envelopes, ballots from all around the county.
I was disappointed.
Kim Alexander is with the California Voter Foundation. She says streamlining mail-in ballot procedures would curb these problems.
We have to make sure that the procedures that are followed across the state are more standardized.
Levine says they've searched through every single bag to make sure no other ballots fell through the cracks.
There is a lot of lessons learned here, and I can tell you we are looking at our procedures.
So here's the deal. Those voters will go on record as having voted, but they may never know if their vote is in one of those pink envelopes.
And then there were states like West Virginia, where in every single district, Bernie Sanders won, yet only 2 superdelegates would go to Bernie Sanders. And then at the convention, Bernie Sanders would have the state stolen from him. My next interview is with Josephine Perulli and Jim Boydston. Let's talk about the shredding of the ballots. You guys seen a truck outside of a ballot place?
We were observing them processing the ballots. And then one day when we went, because we went every day regularly, one day that we went, there was a shredder truck parked out in front.
And on the sides of it, it said Southern California Shredding.
I'm worried about them whiting out the ballots too, because we observed them whiting out the ballots in San Diego. All the bubbles that had Bernie's name filled in, they were whited out. And when we asked George, one of the supervisors there, about it, he said, "Oh, those people were not properly registered in a proper party to vote for Bernie." And then when we asked him, "Well, did you notify all those people?" He said, "No." And I thought, well, how are they going to know then? How did they know if their vote counted? Unlike in Arizona or New York, Arizona was the one where parties' registration were changed and people were able to find out that their party registration was changed. They got smart in California. They just gave you a provisional ballot. We observed them giving a provisional ballot at all the precincts like they were lollipops. And then when we watched them process the ballots, we saw them whiting out. And they told us that whiting out a ballot is not altering.
And Michael Vu is still the San Diego Registrar of Voters.
And he was the one that was it Ohio?
Yeah, he was the one that was forced to resign in Ohio because of the election fraud that occurred there in 2004. And so San Diego County Board of Supervisors hired him and gave him a raise.
Well, for this upcoming election, we have 572 voting precincts. And of that 572, we have approximately 2,500 poll workers that we recruit for.
Crossover ballots, they were telling us that we have to request crossover ballots here in San Diego.
I'm pretty sure that had it not been for election fraud in California, Bernie would have taken California.
Superdelegates are worth 10,000 votes. So states like Michigan, Indiana, West Virginia, Kansas, Wisconsin, and others would go to Hillary Clinton at the convention.
All because of superdelegate voters.
Hillary Clinton ended up with 570 superdelegate voters, and Bernie Sanders only received 44. This means Hillary Clinton received equal to 5.7 million votes, and Bernie Sanders only received 440,000 votes. Ironically, Hillary Clinton would lose the electoral vote while winning the popular vote.
Let's do the math here. So Bernie Sanders had 13 million in the primary, while Hillary Clinton had 16 million votes in the primary. Without the superdelegates, Bernie Sanders would beat her by 1 million, with 12 million votes to her 11 million votes. This is broken down evidence of why the superdelegates tilt the scale in favor of people like Hillary Clinton